And all he asks of us is we give each other love. That's a line of our theme song for the series. This is, welcome to the Dr. Ron on Relationship Show. And we're going to have a little fun with that kind of a metaphor this time. So, we're talking about old friends. Right? How many of you have friends? Well, good. How many of you have got friends that you still are, in constant relationship with, that have been friends since you were little kids? Wow. Really? Since like elementary school? Neighbors or from school? Or? School. Isn't that something? That's really neat. My best friend from elementary school, Lamont, his dad owned department stores in Mount Pleasant and Shepherd. And Lamont and I became friends in school, and we both went to the same church. So I guess we became friends there and school. But we became friends in school because we were the kids that were getting in trouble all the time. I had a 12-year older brother and a 10-year older sister, and I knew all my letters and numbers and how to read and all that stuff before I went to kindergarten. I was bored stiff. And so was Lamont, and I don't know, just because he was a genius. Lamont ran his bedroom, the shades and the record player and the lights and all that stuff from a switchboard beside his bed in 2nd grade. In 4th grade, we put an intercom in their house. In 3rd grade, we had our own radio station. It was a 1-watt FM station. Lamont graduated from Michigan State with a degree in computer science in 1975. Immediately worked for Texas Instruments, holds several patents. I was looking him up on the internet the other day. They have a Lamont Foundation with over $2 million in assets. I didn't know. But I haven't seen him since the 80s when he came to Walt Disney World when I was working there. So, because preachers' kids move. And I know some of you had childhood friends, and you lost touch with them, didn't you? Because they moved, or you moved, or things changed. And some of us have friends from high school that you still hang around with. We get a few of those, don't we? How about from college? I've still got a college buddy I see all the time. Sometimes from work. Sometimes we do find friends in our workplaces, right? And sometimes we even find friends at church. Who would have thought? What makes a friend? Why are friends different than other people that we know? Because we have lots of acquaintances, don't we? We know a lot of people. What makes friends different?
They love you and make you laugh.
They like you back. That helps, doesn't it?
They listen.
They listen.
They accept you.
They accept you.
They support.
Even knowing all your flaws, they accept you, right? And they support you. And you do the same for them too, right? And that's what binds you together.
You can trust them.
You can trust them. That's right.
Common memories.
Common memories, yes. And sometimes common interests. And sometimes we have limited friends. I don't know about it. There are people in my past. I've had music buddies and golf buddies. I mean, we didn't do anything else. We played golf together and we enjoyed that time. But it wasn't like they came over, for other activities. And I'm sure we all have those. They're in some part of our life they're important, but not in all of it. And I'm not sure why that is, but that it seems to happen. The Greeks had a wonderful word for friendship. It was phileo. And you know that word because you know about the town Philadelphia, which is the place of brotherly love. Filio is a word that means attracted to. It ranges, it's kind of like our word for love. It has a lot of different meanings, We say, we love our spouse, we love potato chips. It's not the same thing. I hope not anyway. And the word filio was kind of the same way. It means anything from an affectionate feeling towards someone all the way to romantic love. And so there's a wide range of meanings in that word. The Greeks also had two other words for love. One of those was eros, which talks about eroticism or erotic love, sometimes romantic love, but more of the erotic stuff. It really talks about ecstasy. And that was really important in Greek culture. And then the other kind of love didn't get a whole lot of credit or a whole lot of talk in Greek culture. That was agape, which was just kind of a social or moral love, for all people. No big deal. And then Jesus came along. And like many things, he turned it upside down. So that eros now became the least desired as far as religious experience. Because in Greek culture at that time, the highest religious experience was to have some kind of ecstasy, some kind of ecstatic experience of the gods. And people would use drugs and all kinds of things to get themselves to that state. And what Jesus said when he turned it upside down is that's not what we're aiming for. We have filio still in the middle, but what we're aiming for is agape love. And he re-explained what that meant. That agape love is an unconditional regard, an unconditional love for all God's people, for all creation. And that was the highest one could aspire to. That's not easy, is it? Because in our culture, we're like the Greek culture. There's all those people out there, all our acquaintances, and they can come and go. And then there's our friends, and then there's our significant others, and they're the most important to us. And the ones we have the most loyalty to, and the most conditional, but also the most unconditional at the same time. Because those we're closest to, they have to meet all those conditions before they become our significant other. They go through friendship and romantic interest and all that other. It's a narrow group, I hope. You have acquaintances, then you have friends, and the significant other, usually that's, in our culture, one. At least one at a time. And, well, I've known guys who've tried more than that, but it doesn't work very well. So it's very discriminating, and yet they're the ones we are the most forgiving, the most allowable. They're the ones we live with enough to overlook their foibles and their craziness to a point, right? More so than we do with our friends. When Jesus was speaking with his disciples, he was not only talking about the kinds of love that they understood in their culture, but the kinds of relationships that people had. As their rabbi, he was their master. They had followed him. They had learned from him. He was the one who called the shots. And now, as he's approaching the cross, he says to them, you are no longer in that relationship with me. You are no longer servants. You are no longer, the word he uses actually, sometimes gets translated slaves. It really means bondservants. So a bondservant is someone who does have freedom, but they're also tied to their master for a specific amount of time or a specific amount of work until they're free to go. And Jesus is granting them that freedom. You are no longer bondservants. You are friends. This is a whole new relationship with God. I'm not sure how they reacted to that. We don't have that in the text. They all didn't go, huh? What do you mean by that? What does it mean when God is your friend? Most of us grow up as little ones thinking of God more like our parent. In fact, in some cultures, a very nasty parent, a very demanding parent, a very quick to punish parent. I grew up with that parental image, but mine was more of a loving parent, one who guided and taught and disciplined when necessary. But as I grew up, I came into a different relationship with my parents. Did you? When we are no longer living in the house, when we start to relate to our parents as adults, that changes, doesn't it? Not that they don't still give us advice now and then. In fact, a lot of us now are at the age where we're trying to give our parents advice. Have you experienced that? They don't take it well, do they? About as well as we did when we were 16 and 14 and stuff. But that relationship changes. And in Jesus, the relationship that God's people had with God changed. At least he said it did. For those who were willing to accept that change. Change from that God up here, us down here making sacrifices to try to please God, to friends. Now that's an interesting concept, isn't it? You think of God as your friend. So what do you do with friends again? You support them, right? They support you. They overlook your little foibles and faults, right? You overlook theirs. You learn to get along. You learn to support each other, and be with each other, and enjoy each other's company. That's a pretty good relationship, isn't it? We like our friends. Because when we're with our friends, we're comfortable. When we are with our friends, we are also challenged at times, aren't we? I don't know about you, but my friends are always the ones kind of pushing me to do a little more. Say, oh yeah, you can get over it. You can do that. Go ahead. They won't take any excuses or take any guff. And when I think about a relationship with God, that's that kind of a relationship. We learn that through our friends. When we were little, we learned that relationship with God was like our parent. But when we grew up, as Paul says, we put off those childish ways. And we learned to relate to God this way, as a friend. So in God, we have many friends, our brothers and sisters. And yet, God calls us to an even greater love than that. And that's an undying love and regard for all God's creation. And that's harder. Because that means loving people we don't like. That means loving people that don't look like us, or talk like us, or act like us. It means loving people who are horrible people. That's really hard to do. It means loving people who abuse babies until they die. Doesn't mean you have to like them. But God calls us to love them. It means loving people who destroy American embassies and kill ambassadors. Doesn't mean we don't want to bring them to justice. But it does mean that we love them. That's hard, isn't it? I don't know about you, but I don't know, I'm so ready to love them people. And yet God calls us to that hard love, that difficult to do love. That says that all God's people have worth, that all God's people are loved by God. Doesn't like what they do sometimes. I don't like what I do sometimes. But it does mean that we are called to love them. That's awfully hard. It was a lot easier when all those people we didn't really know, we didn't have to love. And they were down there at the bottom of the totem pole, you know. We could love that significant one, we could like our friends, and all those other people we could just ignore if we had to, or if we wanted to. And Jesus turns it all upside down and says, no, please, when you love the least of these, especially the ones you don't like, especially the ones that don't like you, especially the ones who do horrible things, but love them anyway. If you can do that, you can only do that with God's help. You can't do that on your own. You can only do that if you are living in God. As we go through this series, think about how that underlying principle guides everything else. That challenge that God gives us to say, you can love everyone. Boy, I don't know about you, I can name a few people. It's real hard. But with God's help, we can do that. Filial love is a wonderful thing. It's necessary in our lives to have people we have affection for. We know physiologically that affection is important. To have, the chemicals that are released in our bodies when we are around people that we like and that like us. But beyond that, God calls us to the agape love, the unconditional love for all God's creation. And that's harder to do. Together and with God's help we can, as we learn to relate to all those ways. And relate. Okay, let's pray. We like to have those wonderful, ecstatic mountaintop experiences. Sometimes we don't like to do the hard work of reaching out to people we don't know or like or care for. And yet Jesus said, if you are my friends, you will do what I say. And that's to love your neighbor as yourself. To love the Lord your God. And that's hard to do sometimes, Lord. So give us strength. And give us the will